Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be talking about Trails in the Sky first chapter. This is my second video on the game. Last time I talked about the critical reception off of OpenCritic. The game is now sitting at a 91, when making it one of the highest reviewed games of the year, surprisingly. Besides the critical reception, I wanted to look at the Steam performance, namely the user reviews, the sales charts, and the player count, the concurrent player count, just so we can see how it's doing with the people, you know? So yeah, let's hop into it. Looking at the Steam page, it looks like the game has 800 reviews right now, with 97% being positive, giving it the overwhelmingly positive review naming convention on Steam. It seems like people are really liking it. Seems like from most of the reviews that I read through, seems like it's mostly Trails fans coming back for more Trails, which is unsurprising. And I think we'll see that reflected in the player count and in the sales charts that we'll be taking a look at. I was interested to see, this is a remake of the first game, so you know, it's a great onboarding place for new fans to come in and see what all the hullabaloo is about. But it looks like maybe, dare I say, maybe not doing as well as you might think. 800 reviews, right? Not that crazy. But in reality, there's actually maybe a reason for that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I wanted to comment on some of the troubles I noticed, at least in my opinion, with the launch of Trails in the Sky first chapter. Number one, the game was not available for pre-order. I'm pretty sure on Steam at least. Also, yeah, I'll only be talking about the Steam release here. Not looking at Nintendo, not looking at PlayStation. Although on PlayStation there are, there's some numbers you can look at with the reviews, the star reviews. So if you have a PS5, you want to check out, see how many reviews that game has, feel free. Maybe leave it in the comments below. I won't be doing that. So for the Steam release, there was no pre-order. It wasn't until it came out on September 19th that it was available to buy. That's one thing. And usually that matters because, games rely heavily on their pre-orders. They, gain traction in Steam's algorithm, I'm pretty sure. Am I talking out of my ass? I don't know. I'm pretty sure they gain, traction in Steam's algorithm from pre-orders, along with wish lists, obviously, which the game was available to be wishlisted the whole time. You could follow on Steam as well. I think all those interactions with the store page make the game more discoverable. But I do think pre-orders is a big thing, The more pre-orders a game has, the higher it goes on like the top sellers list or the upcoming list, Makes it seem more desirable to see for other people to see like, okay, this is what people are interested in. So the fact that it wasn't available for pre-order, kind of crazy to me. Another thing with the release on Steam, at least, the developer obviously is Falcom. So the publisher for Trails in the Sky first chapter is Gung Ho Online Entertainment. Usually, Trails games are handled by Xseed or NIS, so I think this is a first for the Trails series at least. I call into question their quality as a publisher. Actually, I think on this very channel I praised Gung Ho against Marvelous, and let me just right now take that back, and we'll get a little bit into that later as well. But the Steam release for Trails in the Sky first chapter didn't have its deluxe edition available until Monday, September 22nd. The game came out on September 19th. That is yet another reason why this game may have sold less than it should have. Not making. We don't know how many copies the game sold, but the deluxe edition not being available. I think the DLC came out maybe before the deluxe edition was available, so you could buy it piecemeal, but I don't think anyone's really doing that. So no pre-order, no deluxe edition. It's just not a good look for Gung Ho. Seems like they really kind of have hurt the Steam release. I don't know by how much, but definitely a non-zero amount. Now, I mentioned that there was more to the story than these 800 reviews and this Steam page for the English release. That's because apparently in China there was a completely different version sent out, published by a different company called Clouded Leopard Entertainment. And that Steam page has its own separate stats that we can look at, including review count, sales chart position, and concurrent users. So taking a look over there, we can see that the game is also overwhelmingly positive, but this time with 97% of the reviews being positive, but they have 1,095 reviews. So more than the English version. They didn't have any issues with the deluxe edition, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they didn't have any issues with the deluxe edition. Was it available for pre-order? That I do not know. Honestly, I have no idea. I'm gonna guess probably not. But maybe? Who's to say? Really? Because why the hell would I have seen the Chinese version? You know, but I just noticed that the English version was not available for pre-order. But at least the deluxe edition was available for purchase over here. This is another sign. So basically, the higher reviews, right, 1,095 versus 800, implies just off those numbers alone, that the Chinese version sold better than the English version. This is true of some games on Steam where, you know, the Chinese market is becoming more and more important, and they're becoming more and more of the market share for some games. And I think the difference between the Chinese version of the game and the English version of the game can be further highlighted by the difference in player count between the two versions. So first, looking at the English player count, an all-time peak 3 days ago as of recording of 4,874. Honestly, not that big of a number if you've seen some other games out there. Namely, I guess some recent examples of relatively niche Japanese role-playing games that are somewhat comparable, I'd say at least. You have Rune Factory, Guardians of Azum from Marvelous. I apologize for my slander. They had an all-time peak 3 months ago of 13,121. Pretty good. Another game, Story of Seasons, Grand Bazaar. All-time peak 17 days ago, 12,898. And finally, Fantasy Life, The Girl Who Steals Time. All-time peak 4 months ago, 65,389. Whoa. Cool thing is, we have sales numbers for each of these games, at least reported. Rune Factory came out in June. Sometime in August, they announced that they had sold 500,000 copies. So that gives us a little context, right? 13,000 on Steam at least. Obviously, these games sell a lot on Switch, PlayStation. Actually, I'm not sure if this one is on PlayStation. I'm guessing it is. But who the hell knows? Who cares, right? I mean, come on, PlayStation. I'll tell you. No, but 13,000 on Steam, 500,000 total, right? Not 13,000 sales, but 13,000 max players. It just kind of like gives us some context, you know? This isn't exact science, okay? Story of Seasons, 12,898, basically 13,000 as well. Also sold 500,000 copies, I think, in less than a month. So a little bit quicker than Rune Factory, but still respectable. And then Fantasy Life, I think at this point, Fantasy Life latest sales numbers is 1.2 million units sold worldwide as of July 2025. So, and that's with 65,000 concurrents. So yeah, that's what you get. So back to Trails in the Sky first chapter, so we can get some more context on those numbers there. 4,874, almost 5,000. So not the greatest, you'd probably think, right? If we look at some of the other Trails releases, for example, Daybreak 2. Daybreak 2 has an all-time peak of 1,835. So much less. Cold Steel, 1,628. I'm not sure if that might not have been at launch. Daybreak, which I think, you know, a starting point for Trails in some regard, you know, start of a new arc. 2,073. That's not, you know, it's about half. So yeah, just looking at Daybreak, I think is just a little bit more context. So they pretty much doubled it, which is good, you know, doubling your player base, but it's not, you know, probably not what they were expecting, at least from the English side. But the story changes once you look at the Chinese release. They have an all-time peak 3 days ago, as of recording, of 14,295. That is much better, much better, and brings it more in line with Rune Factory, Story of Seasons, which went on to sell 500,000 in a respectable amount of time. If you combine the Chinese version and the English version, and you do some basic math, it comes about 19,000. Let's say 19,000, right? That's about right. Somewhere around 19,000, all-time peak. It's pretty good. So this doesn't necessarily mean that Trails in the Sky First Chapter has right now sold 500,000 copies, but it does indicate that it's trending similar to games that have sold 500,000 copies, at least reportedly. So you could hold out hope that the game is performing relatively well, given its niche franchise, But I will say the game probably isn't the super breakout hit that they would have wanted, given that it's a remake of the first game, being a great jumping on point for so many people. But only Falcom can know their expectations, so who knows, maybe they're happy with how the game is doing. At least on the English side, honestly, I'm really surprised to see it only reach around 5,000 max players. I mean, it is a competitive time right now. The game is $60, which, is less than the normal $70 that most games are pricing themselves at right now. There's great word of mouth, great reviews, both critically and from the users. So I'm a little surprised to not see it be higher, but at the same time, it seems like it's doing okay, I think Rune Factory, surprising for them, for Marvelous. I think Story of Seasons, also surprising for Marvelous to see it do so well. And I think Trails is happy to sell 500,000 maybe in a month, when everything's all said and done. Now, the stipulation and the concern is that Rune Factory and Grand Bazaar might have greater presence on Switch than Trails in the Sky First Chapter. That's just conjecture. I don't really know if that's true or not. I'm sure Trails in the Sky appeals to Switch players just as much as those other games, but it feels like those games may have more history on those platforms, whereas Trails has more of a history on PC and PlayStation, namely the PSP. So an important piece of information, on the week, Steam has sales charts. It has sales charts. It doesn't really have data per se, but it does have top 100 products by revenue and it lists games against each other. So you have some sort of relative sense of how things are doing. Now, revenue is important, right? So a game that's cost $70 is going to generate more revenue with the same number of copies sold as a game that sells $60. Also, free-to-play games are on this list, right? So Marvel Rivals, Counter-Strike 2, these are high up on the list because microtransactions, they make a lot of money, a lot of revenue. So, for the week of September 16th to September 23rd, Trails in the Sky First Chapter was released on September 19th. So that gave it, let's say, 5 days on charting here on Steam. And after the week ends, Steam kind of solidifies the chart. Usually during the week, things are moving up and down. So where did Trails in the Sky First Chapter end? For the English version, it ended at number 19, which is not great, in my opinion. Not great. Yeah, you had the pre-ordered for Silent Hill F, pre-ordered for Sonic Racing Cross Worlds at 10 and 11 respectively. So yeah, that gives you a hint of how important pre-orders are. Those games are pre-orderable. You hear the hype, you go to Steam, you pre-order the game, it does well, you see that games are selling well, you're like, oh, what's this you're interested in? Oh, maybe I'll pre-purchase this as well, right? Those are $70 games. So just like what I said earlier, some of that revenue difference is going to be because of that $10 difference, but still, that's a big jump, 10 to 19, 11 to 19. Especially considering the game is out for Trails and those are just pre-orders. So if I'm reading this right, unless I'm an idiot, and I'm known to be an idiot, Silent Hill F sold more in its pre-order window for this week than Trails in the Sky first chapter did its initial sales. Surely Silent Hill F's pre-orders were open for the entire week, whereas Trails in the Sky only had from the 19th to the 23rd to sell. But still, that's the release of a game. You'd hope that it would be higher, right? Something like Dying Light Beast is up there, released at number 2, Borderlands 4 at number 1. You know, these are new games. It's just kind of looks a little disappointing, in my opinion. Not a death sentence, but disappointing. Now, if you look at the Chinese version for that same week, September 16th to September 23rd, Trails in the Sky first chapter is at number 7. Sonic, Crossworlds, Silent Hill F are nowhere to be seen on this list. So now, are they available in China? I don't know. I'm not checking that. But it shows the difference of audience. Number 7, only below Esports FC, which I think is FIFA. Apex Legends, Dying Light the Beast, Dota 2, Delta Force, and Counter-Strike 2. Huge games, except for Dying Light, I guess. But Dying Light, apparently, huge game. But top 10. That's really good. And that correlates with what we saw in the player base. 14,000, I think it was. Really crazy. Really, really crazy. The Chinese version is carrying Trails in the Sky first chapter. We Americans, we have failed this franchise. So I think we can close out saying we need to do better, America. We're failing Trails. The Chinese are covering our ass. This franchise wouldn't be anything without them. And we're lucky to get second chapter. And if we do get second chapter, we can thank our Chinese brothers and sisters. I am part of the problem. I have not bought this game. I just don't want to play the game I already played. I played it 5 years ago. I don't want to play it again. I played second chapter last year. I just don't want to play it again. It looks great. I played a little bit of the demo. Fucking amazing. The presentation was blowing me away. God, I want to play it, but I also know I shouldn't. I should go play new games. But I am a part of the problem. I apologize. But honestly, it looks like this game is selling mostly to Trails fans who are excited to go back and play it, the remake, rather than reaching a brand new audience, except for maybe in the Chinese market. That's my read on the situation. Hopefully, in less than a month, they'll announce 500,000 copies sold. We can pray for 1 million, but I'm not holding my breath unless the console performance is that much better. Let me know what you guys think about this, all this information. Do you think the game sold better? Do you think Falcom is happy? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want more coverage of the Japanese games industry. Goodbye.